I'm an Australian escort and I was detained in Singapore for working. I want to talk about this to, I guess, raise awareness. It's not something we see publicly discussed a lot. And oftentimes I think a lot of us are in denial that it will happen to us, particularly when we see other industry peers flying all over the world, doing whatever they want and never getting caught, or having industry peers in your ear saying, oh no, you're being paranoid, that won't happen to you, because they've been everywhere and you assume that you're going to be fine too. Now, for anyone who's been following me for a long time, particularly on TikTok, I've already told this story before. However, I don't have the original copy of the full story. And obviously, given it's been almost a year since this happened, my memory may be a little bit foggy on certain things that may not be, in the exact order of events, particularly little notes in the story. But I'm gonna do my best to remember anything and everything that I can, because it might be helpful to other industry peers, maybe picking up where I could have gone wrong or maybe being able to work out what happened. I wanna note as well, this was my first time working in another country. This was my first international tour. And again, if you didn't watch the second part, I have just filmed, I had the hotel that I was staying in give a client my full legal name, which kind of potentially plays a role in this story. So if you haven't watched that video, I would recommend watching that before you watch this part. It's exactly the same. I'm sitting in the exact same spot, wearing the exact same outfit, filmed right before this one. So let's just continue on the story, I guess, and hopefully I can remember as much information as I can. So after my little blowout with the reception staff at the hotel, I headed to the airport. Now in Singapore, the airport is attached to a shopping center. It's really beautiful. There's like a big waterfall inside. I wanted to see that. I wanted to get videos of that. I wanted to shop because I'd been working so much while I was in Singapore. I was really busy and I hadn't really adventured out much besides the social booking that I had been on, and adventured that way. It was on my to-do list to spend that day before my flight, because if I remember right, my flight was quite late, like maybe like 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. or something like that, right? And I wanted to shop. So I looked up online, and apparently with the airline I was flying with, I could check my baggage in early and leave it there, and I could go and shop without having my big suitcase and my duffel bag and all that kind of thing, right? Which is just so convenient, and that was my plan. So I get to the airport hella early. I'm finding where the actual airport is because I got dropped off at the shopping mall, and I'm going through, and then I find the airport, which did take me a little bit of time because it's a little bit confusing there. And then I found the early baggage drop off not too long after that, and I tried to drop off my luggage. Now I kept getting an error that they could not let me check in my bags early, and I thought, this is really strange. And I left it for an hour. Like I went into Starbucks with my suitcase still, had my food, was filming the little robot that comes and serves you at Starbucks, which is really cool, and just kind of hung around in there for maybe an hour, and then went and tried to check in my bags again, and still wasn't working. Now those early check-in baggage things, they don't have assistants there to help you. There was nobody that could help me in that situation, but I did go up to like an information desk within the airport and say, hey, this is happening, like what can I do? Pretty much what they said to me was, look, there's nothing we can do because we've got no way to check you in. That airline you're flying with doesn't have anyone at their desk until a couple hours before your flight, so you're pretty much just gonna have to wait until you can do your proper check-in to leave your bags here. This was all incredibly unusual. And at the time I did think it was weird, but I just thought it was the universe, like there was a bigger plan, there was a reason, I wasn't meant to be shopping earlier because I'd waste money or something like that, right? So essentially for hours, I went and sat in a corner of the airport. I was reading my book. I was bored out of my brain. I was scrolling on TikTok. I was doing this, doing that, waiting. And I had no idea what I was in for. At this point in time, there is no way I could have known what was going to happen. I just thought that there was just an issue with my passport, something like that, right? Or maybe like something had been booked with an incorrect letter or something in my name, and that's why it wasn't letting me do it. We're at the point in time when I go to check in, right? Check in at the counter, but they've also got those little kiosks where you like self-check in just in front of the counter, right? So I obviously tried one of those first, the kiosk, because if I can avoid not having to talk to people at those places, I will. So I'm there, I'm trying to check in, again, not working, not even on those ones. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, that is really, really strange, really strange. So I go up to the desk, go to check in as normal, and I did notice the lady give me an unusual look. Like, there was just something. She wasn't rude to me at all, she wasn't, but something felt off. Something felt off at that point in time. And, you know, obviously they took my bags. I still had my like carry-on and my handbag, and I've proceeded on through to go into the airport, right? Now there was a guy checking the tickets to even proceed through, and I remember getting this weird feeling as he took my ticket, and he said, "Yes, ma'am, you can go." And I was like, "Oh, look, like I'm getting through, like there's no issues." It wasn't super busy, and essentially there are sets of like clear doors, gates, so you can see over them. They're only to like maybe this high on you at max, and you walk through the first one. So if I remember at the first one, you scan your passport, and then when it scans that, it opens the first set of little doors and you walk in, and I believe then they close behind you and you've got a second set in front of you. So you're kind of trapped in this little section, a bit like cattle, right? And in that bit, I believe it was a fingerprint, and also it was scanning my face to match my face to my passport. Now, at that point in time, I can't go anywhere. I have a set of gates in front of me closed and a set of gates behind me closed. And all of a sudden, it starts alarming. So I think it turned red, if I remember right, and was flashing, and there was an alarm going off. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening to me? I'm so glad that it wasn't busy, because there wasn't too many people seeing this, and people didn't really seem to be looking at me or anything like that. I've kind of looked around like, what am I meant to do? What's going to happen now? And a man in all of his gear, like his full, like, if I remember right, he had a gun, but it might not have been a gun. It looked like a gun on him, everything, comes strolling over, and he's like, "Miss, come with me." At that point in time, the gates that were behind me reopened. So I went back that way to him. Now, just off to the side, not very far at all, like you could see it from those gates, was like the immigration. There was, you know, like a desk over there, and like the detainment area. So we stroll up, and he has to go around the back, and he was like, "Just wait there for a moment, miss." And I'm waiting there, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this isn't happening. Am I dreaming? And I'm sort of like pinching myself. I'm like, there's no way. And then he's talking to a colleague, and he goes, "Okay, come up here. We'd like to see your phone." At this point in time, you know, I'm not in a room anywhere. It's just a desk there. If you've been through Singapore airport, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I actually have no idea if I had the right to not let them check my phone. I'm really not sure. But they asked to see the phone, and I didn't want to cause any more trouble. So of course I said yes, and I gave them the phone, and they also asked for my ID. He then was like, "You need to unlock the phone," which I did, and gave it to them, and they started clicking through things on my phone. Now, if you weren't aware, things like porn are not legal. From what I understand, they're not legal in Singapore. So the first thing he did was go to my photos, and I'm assuming they were looking to see if I had any sort of porn on there, which I did not, luckily, because I do also make content, right? And it was just, I hadn't filmed anything or done anything while I was over there. So there was nothing there for them to find. So they were looking through that, and then I believe they opened up my WhatsApp, which is where I had been communicating with my clients. Now, pretty much as soon as he opened that, I think he saw what he was looking for and was like, okay. And he was like, "I'm gonna need to take you out the back." And I was like, okay. So they took me through like a little high security area, and I ended up in like an interview room was what it was. There was a computer desk and everything, and he was on one side, I was on the other, and the questioning started. So they had a lot of questions. What was I doing in Singapore? How long had I been there? What did I do for work back home? To which I said that I ran a business, and he asked questions like, "Well, you know, what's your website?" And I said, "I can pull it up for you if you'd like." He didn't really ask any more questions about that. They were just asking a lot of different things, all sorts of things. Some things I wasn't even sure how they related to, you know, me being held there. And then again, he started going through my phone. Again, the images where I actually had photos of the adventure day that I'd had with the client in the last part of this video. I had videos of me and him together, stuff like that. Videos and photos of us looking at, you know, those trees and the beautiful hotels and things I'd stayed in, and all of that was on my camera roll. So he did see that, and he seemed to be like paying attention to that because I guess that made me look like a tourist. And he asked me questions about what I had been doing most of my days in Singapore, and I just said I had been there to see friends and things, and that's who was in the photos, was a friend. and that, you know, I'd been to see those trees and all that sort of stuff, and drinking and just seeing Singapore, that kind of thing. But I could tell that he didn't believe me, obviously. He proceeded to go through my messages on WhatsApp, which is how I was communicating with all of those international clients, and was going through one by one, reading all of the messages exchanged between myself and them. In particular, he was very interested in one client, and I know this client has seen multiple Australian workers. I had no issue with this client, and I don't think the client was involved in setting me up in any way. This is a different client to the one that got my legal name, but they seemed very interested in him. Now, this may be because on his WhatsApp, he had a picture of his face, and most of the clients didn't have pictures on their WhatsApp. But it could also be because he was, I guess you could say, high profile within the country, and maybe a recognizable face. But they seemed very interested in him. Now, they were asking me who he was and what I had been doing with him, and why there was discussions of payment in the WhatsApp messages. And I just lied, and I told them that he was a photographer, because obviously I don't want to be getting a client in trouble. I don't want, you know, my clients losing their livelihood because I was over there working when I shouldn't have been. The issue is me, not the clients. I don't think that's fair at all. So of course my first instinct is to defend and try to protect the clients from being dragged into this shit. So I said he was a photographer, right? Now, I don't think the guy believed me at all about that comment, but it was worth a try. Proceeded to ask more and more questions, different bits and pieces. I don't really think any of those questions are relevant to the story, but I was held in there with the questions alone for at least half an hour in that part. Now, we got to the point of the money, because obviously I had money on me, on my persons, because I had made money in the country. However, smartly on my part, I had divided the money into separate sections within different bags, so not all of my cash was with me in that duffel bag that I had on hand. Some of it was in my suitcase. So he asked if he could see the money, any money that I had with me. And so I pulled out my wallet, which was quite fat at the time, like thick from the cash in it. And I pulled out the notes that were inside of that wallet and gave them to him. And if I remember correctly, in that wallet, there was somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 in Singapore dollars in there. And he said to me, "How much money did you come into Singapore with?" And I said something along the lines of $8,000 or $9,000. And he seemed to be like, okay. Like in his head, it looked like he was thinking that would make sense for me to still have cash to be, you know, going back with. And he said to me, "Do I have any more cash?" And all I responded to that was, "I can get out the coins for you." Because obviously I had Singapore like dollar coins and stuff like that. And he laughed and he was like, "Oh, no, I don't need the coins. Don't worry about it." And then proceeded on with other questions. Now, that he didn't ask again if there was more money, like nothing like that. He didn't, and he did not search my bag either. I did think that he would search my stuff, but he didn't. Honestly, he was lovely to me. He really was. Like, he wasn't getting angry, he wasn't being rude, and he kept saying, "If you feel uncomfortable, I can bring someone else in, because I understand you're a woman and I'm a man, and like, you probably, you know, it could be scary being one-on-one." That kind of thing. And I believe he had a camera on him the entire time. But he was very polite about the situation. But obviously I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. Singapore is a very harsh country. From what I understood going over there, things like being caught with weed would have you put in jail for life, or I think there was a case of someone with drugs being sentenced to death. Don't quote me on that, but that was the pretense that I was under going into the country. So I wasn't sure what the repercussions would be to me being caught working in the country. Now, escorting is in a weird grey area in Singapore. It is not legal, but it is not illegal. And they are very on top of things like trafficking. They're very worried about, etc. But obviously I did not have a working visa, because my working visa would never have been approved, as do no touring internationally sex workers, because the countries are not going to approve a visa for somebody to go and escort in the country, even if it is legal there. It just doesn't happen. And you can get in the comments and tell me I shouldn't have been doing it. Sure, I shouldn't have been doing it, but you know, if the countries are going to make it so difficult, especially places where it's not illegal, you know, all the workers are doing this, all of them are. So of course, you know, you can throw your comments at me, I don't really care. But it's not just me doing this. And I was told this was fine to do by all of my industry peers that had been over there before me. Now, after a lot of questioning, I was taken into another room where I was put in front of like a very big, like professional camera thing that was kind of like mounted, and I had to stand against a wall, and I had my mugshot taken, I had my height measured, I had all of my fingerprints done on both hands, like the weird, you know, like these ones, and everything was done, full mugshots, the whole lot. And I think that point when I was having mugshots taken and my fingerprints taken, I think that was when I realized how bad it was, like that it was genuinely scary to me. I think I was probably shaking at that point. I'd managed to hold it pretty together for the questioning, and, you know, essentially was just trying to play as dumb as I could. And then, yeah, after the photos were done and my fingerprints were done, I was put into a waiting room, but I was still locked. There was no way to get out of that room. It was all high security back there. While I was sitting there, I posted an Instagram story to my close friends saying that I had been detained. I didn't know how long I was going to be in that waiting room with my phone, and I didn't know what was going to happen. Of course, my phone, like the second people started seeing it that were close friends of mine, they were worried. I messaged my parents and I said, hey, look, I'm detained. I don't know what's going to happen. When I can, I'll tell you what's going on. I also then went through my photos and I deleted the photos that I had with the client because I didn't want him getting in trouble. So I deleted those even though they had already seen them. I thought maybe it would save someone else's skin. I also uninstalled things like my TikTok because obviously that had proof of me working. Signed out of my work Instagram, and also deleted my WhatsApp, which is how I lost all of the phone numbers for the clients, and after returning to Australia was not able to let them know what had happened and warn them, particularly the one who they had been extra questioning me about. Anyway, I was sitting there in that room trying to erase evidence, trying to protect other people, I guess. And after a little bit of time, they came and got me. And they essentially told me, well, the guy essentially told me that I would not be allowed back in Singapore without permission from their embassy, that I would have to apply to the embassy and discuss with them why I was in the country if I wanted to try to get back in. And I was led outside, and now at this point in time I'm back like where I had, you know, been between those gates and got caught originally, and I can see other people again. And it was very, very surreal walking back out there, and I just didn't really know what was going to happen. The guy who had been interviewing me, went and was having what looked like a very serious conversation with another officer, I guess you'd call them, for quite some time, and I just stood there and just waited. And I was under the impression that I would be getting handed some sort of paperwork, or that I would be getting marched, you know, in handcuffs to my flight and put back on the plane. But no joke, all that happened was at this point in time, they said to me, okay, you're good to proceed through the gates. And again, commented about contacting the embassy if I wanted to come back into Singapore. And I was literally allowed to walk through doors and proceed into the airport. Now, I can't explain what that felt like the fact I was just allowed to walk in and go, and I kept looking around thinking, like, where are the officers? Like, who, like, when I get through this gate, are they going to be officers to handcuff me there? Like, what is going to happen? But nothing happened. And the entire flight, while I was on the plane, I was wondering if something was going to be reported back in Australia, and when I got back I would step off to be in handcuffs, if that makes sense. I had no idea what would happen because I didn't know anyone who this had ever happened to, and I didn't really know a lot about the laws in terms of this, and, you know, if you get detained in that country, or if they send you back to your home country and you're punished there, I didn't really know what would happen. But essentially I got off the plane back home, and I got in an Uber and I came home, and the whole experience was very, very confusing to me. Very confusing for a lot of reasons. One, when I posted the TikToks about it, people said that didn't count as being banned from the country because I would have got paperwork. I didn't get any paperwork, but I was told multiple times that I would need permission from the embassy. They had all the proof that they needed to see that I had been working in their country. even with the, you know, me trying to dodge and say things with photographers and stuff, they had the proof there. I don't know why I didn't get in more trouble. I don't know why they didn't take the money. There are a lot of things that I have questions about too, and I can't answer them for you because this is all that I know. I don't know how they knew to stop me. I don't know how they worked out who I was. Now, there are some people within the industry with speculations about this. Some think that they just monitor Scarlet Blue and anyone with an unblurred face, and obviously when they see you come through, they would detain you. And that would make sense, right? But given the fact that my name, my legal name, was obviously on some sort of hot list because I couldn't do anything with my passport or check my bags in early or any of that, that wouldn't just be them seeing me and being like, oh yeah, I've seen her on Scarlet Blue, stop her. Because I believe the hit was put on me, or hit, I don't know what else to call it, the mark or the hit was put on me before I even got into the airport that day. So this leaves the question, what happened? How did they know? How did they know that I was a worker? Okay, how did they know that that legal name was attached to my working name, to those photos that they saw online? A lot of my industry peers believed and still believe that it was to do with the client who had my full legal name, who is the other story. If you haven't watched that video, I do not believe that for a second. I do not believe that that client had anything to do with this. I don't. I do not believe it. I do not know why he would do that. I also do not know why any of the clients that I saw in Singapore at all would do something like this if they had also got hold of this information, because I had no negative experiences with any client that I saw in Singapore. They were all lovely to me, all of them. This leads me to believe, in my mind, the most likely reason why I was reported to authorities would have been the incident at the hotel with me fighting with the reception staff about them having provided my legal name to somebody without my consent. I believe that this was likely how they had my name on a hot list and why I was picked up in the first place. If all the drama hadn't happened regarding me trying to check in and all of that, I could probably believe that they just recognized me from photos online on Scarlet Blue, or maybe they were just particularly targeting lone female travelers in a certain age bracket, and that's how I was randomly selected. But given all the drama with my passport not being accepted and the baggage check-in and all of that, I believe that it had something to do with the hotel. I am not the only worker from Australia who has been detained in Singapore. There are a handful of us who have had similar experiences. Most of the girls are not willing to publicly talk about what happened to them because it's kind of dangerous to do that. And I'm well aware of the danger that places on me talking publicly about that. But that country already knows what I did. They already know I was working in their country. And Australia would also know that, because I'm sure that they probably report back to the home country of what the person was doing there. I feel like it's more important to discuss these things and try to raise awareness to keep other workers safe, because I know there are a lot of workers who've been going over to Singapore for a long time and have never had any issues. What I'm going to do in this little bit now is I'm going to mention a couple things that I would change. If I could go back in time with the knowledge I now have, what would I do differently? First thing actually I did do, but I'm going to mention this in case you're a worker going over and maybe haven't thought of this, taking the ads down. When the day you're coming into the country and the day you're leaving the country, take the ads off Scarlet Blue. Mine were already down when I was leaving because I had retired, because it was my final trip, right? So my ad wasn't up anymore anyway. That's something that I would highly recommend doing. Secondly, if I would have understood the chances of them going through my phone, I wouldn't have had photos with clients on there, and I would not have had WhatsApp and my TikTok and my work Instagram and all of that signed into my phone. I would have completely signed out of anything to do with work at all, because that's all proof of what I'm doing, you know what I mean? And honestly, I probably, if I could go back in time, I would have publicized different dates, slightly different dates to what I ended up actually working in the country. For example, claiming I was going to be there for 2 weeks and only being there for 1, because I think that would have probably limited the chances of them working out it was me as well. But all in all, I would not recommend anyone trying to work in Singapore. I would never do it again. It's not worth the risk. You know, to think of how much work I put in. If they would have taken that money from me, I would have seen all those clients and worked all those hours and not being paid for any of it. I also could have ended up thrown in a jail in a foreign country. I would never put myself through that again, never. Sick as a dog, I can just, like, my eyes glassy, my nose sniffling, my nose red through this entire video, but pretty much that is everything that I recall at this point in time. There are probably things I'm forgetting. Again, I didn't get any paperwork. I don't know what happened there. I am aware that I am now on what they call a hot list for international travel, which is quite concerning. I have had this confirmed by a family member who was able to find this information out. It means that if I was to try to get into other countries, it's now recorded that I'm a sex worker. Therefore, the chances of me going anywhere to tour that are outside of Australia are slim to none. New Zealand is very sex work friendly, and New Zealand is Australia's brother pretty much, so I don't think that would be an issue. I would be game to try that, but outside of that, I don't think it's a good idea to even try. To sign this off, I want to say please be safe out there. Please don't live in a delusion that it won't happen to you, because it was my first time and it happened to me. Please don't allow the fact that you're seeing other workers get away with it make you think that it doesn't happen. In particular, at the time that I posted this story on TikTok, I had so many people commenting, oh, but that you're making it up because Reese goes everywhere all the time. Reese and I are good friends, and yeah, he's never been in trouble anyway. He's been all over the world for work. I don't know why it happened to me on my first time, but other people have no issue. I don't know. I can't answer that for you, but all I can say is this did happen to me. This is my real experience, and I wouldn't fucking play games with Singapore again. I would not mess around with touring internationally working. So yeah, I hope this has been insightful. It is quite a hard topic to talk about. Firstly, I think the last video was a bit harder for me to film. And secondly, it does bring up quite a lot. Obviously that was a scary experience, and at the time, I don't think I fully processed what was happening. When I did get home, I realized how scary it was, and I kind of dealt with those feelings after the fact. In particular, the mugshots and the fingerprinting was quite a traumatic experience, and wondering if I was going to get thrown in a jail or if I'd see my family again. Like, there was a lot of things that went through my head at that point in time. And it was also very hard when I posted the content to social media, having so many people be so horrible about it. I have a lot thicker skin now, so I'm not bothered like I was back then. But I think after going through something like this, trying to raise awareness about it and having people be like, oh, you deserve that, or of course they would catch you, like failing to accept the fact that workers have been doing this for years. People being like, well, that's what happens when you don't have a visa. But these are all valid things, but there is not really any point in commenting them, is there? Because I'm aware of these things. It doesn't make the experience any less traumatic than it was. And there was a lot of people saying that I was lying, that I'd never been detained, that I was doing it for a viral video. So yeah, it was a lot, especially after the fact. But yeah, I really hope this is helpful to another industry peer or just someone curious about the industry. And yeah, just so you're aware, hot lists do exist, and once you're on it, you're on it. So yeah, anyway, that's that. I'm gonna go and take another Telfast.